All right. Look, this is actually an update of two things that came in last night, wasn't it, Evan?
It was last
No,
night, this morning.
this morning
Yep.
and this morning. And because of the importance of both of them, in fact, the way they relate to our next two conferences, it's a double-edged thing. Let's start with the Yowies, Evan. Yeah, look, the Yowie thing we're doing, and we've mentioned before that the reason that we've picked this up and gone with it, and we've mentioned it often but never gone any further because we know the dangers in doing so, is because unless we walk on country or see things, or hear things, or see things, which is what's
Well, yeah,
happening
you
here,
hear things, yeah.
yeah, we won't do it. We have to be empirically convinced before we walk down that road. So I never thought we would be walking down the Yarrie
And
Road,
here
but
we are.
and here we are. And we got an update this morning that's made me more convinced we've got to walk down that, and I'll get to that in a second. The first part is I can tell you that both Evan and I, we've mentioned this before, 11 o'clock at night about 2 weeks ago, at exactly the same time Evan pulled up in his car. He'd been out for the night, had his radio on and the engine on, and I was sitting inside our house with the doors and the windows locked, listening to some football. He turned off his radio. I turned off the TV because we heard this noise and we thought it was something wrong with the machines, and it wasn't. Then we both opened up our doors and went outside, and we heard this noise that was coming out of the bush. Now, we've heard it once before, 15 years
Yeah,
before,
many years ago.
and all of us heard it. And we stood in down near the clothesline looking into the bush, listening to this screaming noise. And it never really, just sort of did it and then forgot it really.
Mm.
Well, this time we didn't. And what I noticed was that in both cases, the time before, even when I was standing there with a tennis racket in my hand, hearing this screaming noise, for the first time ever, I was overcome with this sense of fear. And then I got the same sensation again this time round. Take this, and then we spoke to Uncle Donny, and he gave us a lot more information. Then we spoke to Mesref, and he gave us more information, and we started to realise we'd have to do an online conference about Yowies and also the little people because they go together.
Yep.
Then lo and behold, there'd been talk about this, and I spoke to someone this morning, and somewhere nearby, and that's all I'm prepared to say, we are in the process of putting together an expedition. And we've got one that'll go for a day and one that goes for 3 days. So we're doing the 1 day one. And we've been reliably informed that someone has found and replaced and measured bones, and I've heard the word tibia used, that is massive by comparison to any human on this planet ever. And of course, as we know, Yowies are always described as being far bigger than us, and I'm being told there are other bones there too. And as long as location, identity aren't given up, and they won't be, because that's all you're going to get in relation to this, we now know we're going on an archaeological expedition to find proof of what we've heard
Mm.
and what people have spoken about, and the fact that every original Old Way practitioner knows to be true. It looks like, first of all, we heard it with our ears. And by the way, I know, Evan, you were told, why didn't you tape the Yowie?
Yeah, well, I was in the middle of fear of life. So it's a bit
Yes,
hard to think through. I get
you've got to
that.
be there, haven't you?
Yeah, it's
It's not.
spine chilling
We live in a
actually.
rainforest, guys, and it's pitch black, and the rainforest runs to about 30 metres to where the buildings are, and it's thick in there.
Yep.
And we know they were right at the edge of the rainforest. I didn't. I did actually go back inside once. I did go back
Mm.
inside, and I wasn't thinking of getting a tape because I just went back inside and then came back out. And when I went back out, I closed the door, and in mid scream, that Yowie stopped,
Mm.
and I never heard it again. And you're suggesting I go back inside to get something to tape it? Man, all I did was, Evan had the same
Yeah.
premonition I had, go inside and lock everything. Okay, but I don't think it's there to harm us, but I
Yeah, I
just,
think it's more of a, I think they call it infrasound. It's more of a defense
yeah,
kind of
which works.
cloaking mechanism, part of the camouflage. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, I've read a few accounts, and a lot of people have that fear reaction. They don't fear that they're going to be hurt, but you just feel it. It comes on like not unnaturally, but it just kind
It
of,
is unnatural
yeah,
because
it just kind of comes into you,
no,
and that's what you feel.
and you can't get rid of it.
Mm.
And I think it's part of the police use these sort of sound weapons now to make people ill, and I think they've got that themselves. I think that we've learnt from Mesref a lot more about them. So what we are going to do is talk about that in more detail. As to whether I'll have photographs and measurements of that bone, that's actually in process now, and that's all I'm prepared to say about that because that phone call was made about 15 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
So this is fairly new. Speaking of 15 minutes ago, this morning I got an email from our anonymous research person who wants no cred whatsoever, and we've offered to give him plenty for what he's done. He's the one who found all the Slater stuff. And I've got to tell you, the stuff that Slater stuff is a gold mine. It's some of the best. And I found out today that so it makes it such an easy read. And I've told you before, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put together sections of this with some commentary we're going to make as we go through there, and then put them out in slabs, and we'll do them as books. But we will also do them and put them up on our site, so anyone that claims that we're trying to make money out of this, we're not, because to begin with, we give all the information for free first. Okay? And what we are doing this weekend is number one. Everyone who comes this weekend is getting a hard copy, their own hard copy of the introduction, which I've read and is amazing in the claims it makes. And I've got to tell you, the stuff that impressed me most in the introduction was his concept of what civilization is. For him, civilization is contact with the soul. And he claims that humans, when they first came here, and he did use the word came here, didn't he?
He did, yes.
When they first came here,
Yep.
and he's not talking about Australia, he's talking about the world, were more civilized and more aware than nations of 2,000 years ago or today. Those are his words. He saw the primitive people, and he used that term, as being the most evolved and civilized, which is quite unusual for an archaeologist to see things in reverse. He claims that humans were at the peak and have come downwards. We claim the other way around. Some of the claims he makes are phenomenal. And what he does basically say is that he got that manual. We've spoken about that quite a few times. Eliza Dunlop compiled it in 1830 with a Wallamai.
The Murrugawalda.
Murrugawalda. And he says that he's got in this book that we've got, and we're going to be putting it out with checking bits. Not everything's going out, but most will. It is the keys to how to read the Stone Age message around not just Australia, but the world.
Yep.
That is so important. So this weekend at our conference, our workshop, people will be getting a copy of the beginning, and they're also going to find out, we found out now, because the only question we ever couldn't put together was we assumed that was the work of Slater saying the Egyptians were here, the original people at the highest level of humanity, that aliens were their sky heroes and they came here. We thought that stuff got him kicked out and hammered, but it turned out we were wrong.
Probably didn't help, but
But that wasn't the main reason.
Yep.
And our researcher today wrote at the end of this and said this. This is what he said after he put this in. And this guy's very analytical. He said, Slater was trying to rewrite Australian history, and they stopped him.
Yeah,
They're not my words.
Yep.
That's what he said. The information we've got is phenomenal. It validates Slater's role and validates when, in 1936, we can actually say this, when they started to turn against him. And we know why it happened, and we can even see it. He sent us press clippings, again, another 4 press clippings involving whoever? Slater. According to the Courier Mail, he was never covered by anyone. That puts us way over 20 so far, and there's more to come. And it goes back to, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, and those people who think he was an idiot, some of these press clippings go back to 1912, when in 1912, he was not only the correspondent, he was the editor of the newspaper that covered an event that rewrites the whole of Australian history. And I've got to tell you that the people who backed this, and I'm just giving you clues here, included the Archbishop, the Catholic Archbishop of Sydney, who put out this paper that Slater researched and proved was correct. And it changes the whole history of Australia and its ownership, doesn't it?
Yes. It's just always a sticky issue, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we can see this is what he had done, and he had proof that the whole claim of the British discovering Australia and raising the flag was wrong, and it was done a long time before. So that also is going to be released at our workshop. We only just got this information this morning, and what it does do is it really starts to show people, if you want to dismiss this man who was so far ahead of his time, that had so many academics and people of the highest professions backing him and working in the field with him, you'll see that what happened is before 1936, virtually no one was criticising, were they?
That's right.
Then after that, when he did, not the papers, not even the Burragurra paper was the main reason it got cancelled. I thought it was so sensational that a year and a half after it was spoken at the science conference and agreed as being brilliant, it then gets cancelled by the tropical, what was it?
Tropical medicine, wasn't
And
it?
public health.
And public health.
Yeah, they cancelled an archaeological paper. It wasn't about that. It was about what we've just discovered. And it's an historical fact, because what we're going to show you basically is a paper that was taken and bought by the Mitchell Library. They don't buy rubbish. They bought the damn thing, and it's proof. And then Slater did the work when he was the editor of the local paper in somewhere. I'm not going to give too much away, because if you come to the conference you'll find it. And by the way, no, sorry, workshop. By the way, soon after we will be putting a paper out so that everyone can read what we've now found. What it proves to me is, number one, those people who say that Slater was an idiot and a fool and a madman, he was the editor of a newspaper. The top people in the country were working with him. It was written about everywhere, and the research he did and the information he was sitting on, Murray Golder, interprets the Stone Age writings around the world. And it's interesting because a couple of days ago, Evan showed me a rock that was found in Australia that had markings on it that were identical to a rock that was found in Bulgaria, wasn't it?
Yep.
Now, with the Murray Golder papers, we would be able to read that straight away. And all of the knowledge of the past sits within the pages of this book that we now have. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we will be doing is on our workshop this weekend, we will be showing people sections of that, and they will be taking some of that home. And what we've also asked them to do, if you can't get there, do not worry, because we will be asking them, those people, will be giving them that information to send out to anyone they know that feels they would like to find out about the real history of not just Australia, which is what he got kicked out for, but the stuff he didn't kicked out was the history of the world and humanity. They didn't care about that, did they? Not really. I mean, it didn't help him much, did it?
It probably didn't.
It probably kicked him over the edge, but what he did, he started this in 1912 on site, doing the archaeology, by the way, collecting the objects he found to prove this was true. The Archbishop of Sydney puts it out in 1906. He researches it and does it in 1912. Then in 1936, it hits the fan. It comes out again. And then everyone start putting the boot into Slater, because what he was basically saying was, guys, that flag out the front, pull it down.
Yep, wrong
You
flag.
didn't put it up first. This is the part that's scary. When you put something up, like Cook did, and they make a proclamation, although this time it was more the Catholic Church that owned this place, wasn't it? He did. Oh, we better not say too much. Oh, no. What it does, basically, this legally pulls the whole section, the whole idea of claiming this place, if someone has claimed it before you from another country and a lot earlier, no, not even, I mean, we're going back a couple of 100 years at least before Cook, then guess what? It's a null and void claim. And that would help the original people a lot with their claim of sovereignty, wouldn't it?
It would, yes.
Because how can a group that claims to own this country and put the flag up, but they didn't, and someone else claimed it for another country? And that is written, and we've got that written in there, haven't we?
Exactly.
And that's what the Archbishop put up. And do you know why the Archbishop put it up? Because he's Catholic.
It's really just that simple.
And you've got to remember, in Australia, you go back far enough, and this place was broken up into Catholic and Protestant. And what he's basically saying is that England, Protestant country, made a claim, but a Catholic country had claimed it earlier.
Well, even in one of my, because I was a funeral director for about 15 years, one of my local cemeteries, it's weird. There's like all these graves together, and then in the far paddock, surrounded by cows now, is one
For the Catholics.
One grave. Because that animosity between the two groups continued well into the 1900s.
Now remember, 1906, the Archbishop of Sydney. Are we going to claim he's not a nutter? I suppose we've got to, don't we? He's got to be part of the group, hasn't he? Yep. This group of nutters that the mainstream archaeology is talking about include all the highly respected people of the 30s, but now we've got to chuck in, well, basically this guy was the editor of the paper, wasn't he? We've got to throw him in as well, although they say he's an idiot too. But then we've got to throw in the Archbishop of Sydney.
That's right.
Probably the highest ranked Catholic in Australia.
Yep, pretty much.
Either him or Melbourne, or to equally highest rank. But of all the Catholics in Australia, this guy's either number one or number two. And he's got to be an idiot also, hasn't he?
Yep.
Because that's who Slater was working with.
That's right.
Okay, this is, ladies and gentlemen, so if you've got the chance, if you want to see a world exclusive, we can do that a couple of times over this weekend. A, with the book, and B, with the whole story of what took place in Sydney, in Australia in the 1930s. Okay, and I don't know what we'll have next month, but I'm sure it'll be something interesting, but I don't know if we can beat that in a hurry. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully we'll see you guys on the weekend. There's still some few tickets available. So that's a little out at the finish, isn't there? And are there links there, Evan?
Yes, there's links on the side.
Yeah.
So, yeah, click away, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, done. And it's still...